The light gone from his eyes, the boy stares at me, and it rises in me, the rage, the regret, slain his world ablaze, bequeathed to the moon, taken by the night. Crestfallen is my heart for the boy who died in my arms.
Running for his life, stumbling and squeezing through the low branches and weeds, the mud floor quickly turned slippery beneath his bare and unshod feet. The pursuers were not far behind. His chest throbbing and aching, every panting breath became an orchestra of agony as he dragged air into his swollen, bloated lungs. Stopping, he ducked behind a nearby trunk, the soggy wet bark pressing intimately against his sweat-soaked back. With looming black dots swarming before his vision, he calmed his shuddering body by force of will alone, slowly dissipating the shakes swimming through his fear-racked frame. The sudden crashing sound of his pursuers made him stumble forward in terror, as all around him the trees and bushes shook in the wake of their oncoming wrath. Dirty and shaken, he continued his desperate escape, the monstrous creatures at his heels, screeching and howling in rage, whilst trampling everything in their path.
From here, I can see my home and my village clearly. My house is the third dwelling, a bit to the left, down at the foot of the valley. The elders in my family will be looking for me soon. My mother has already taken out the dress and finished the very last stitch with a trembling hand. I can hear music, preparations for the festival rising up from the huts below. This is my village, my people. There is laughter. There will be dancing. Today is a special day, an honor, a tradition. But I am terrified.
That girl ain't stealing my thunder no more. That's why I hired you, Mr. Blackwood.
Rupert Blackwood winced on hearing this. He leaned forward over the conference table, too aware of the clock ticking on the far wall of the small office. The old hag speaking across the desk leered at him from her disastrously large left eye, wiping tears from her cheek where the unblinking orb continually watered. Her face was stern and gaunt, sprouting hairs in places usually reserved for the male of the species. Her mouth smacked when she spoke, as though she were thirsty. Rupert gulped hard, rubbing his own eyes sympathetically as he shouldered the weight of her gaze. Tugging his tie, he could sense heat rising in his face. He wanted to speak, but his throat felt as if it was packed with fungus. Finally, Ms.,
Please, Mr. Blackwood.
pardon me, of course, Ms. Stonecipher. This could be a hard case to prove at trial. His smile was wan, fragile. The aged woman's face wrinkled further. She now seemed even less happy than before. Rupert glanced at the clock, which in his mind was booming, but no one else appeared to notice. Another entreaty. Look, you said that you keep all this stuff written down, right?
Indeed I do.
She wiped her cheek again and adjusted her jet-black shawl. Well, I have to see it. For Pete's sake. How can I take on a case as your lawyer if you won't even let me see the evidence? Rupert let this nugget sink in a moment. He hoped that her reluctance to part with her information would be daunting enough to get her to leave and give up this crazy scheme. Cockles, Miss Stonecipher's black cat, glared at him with great yellow eyes, perched in her mistress's lap. Once more, the old woman blotted at her bloodshot eye, at last turning her head away. Rupert added, exasperated, You can bet that won't play with a judge, either. The elder gasped, looking at him again, her face softer. He blinked in response, thinking, That changes things, huh? Rupert's newly found clientele sometimes gave him pause. He was in great demand ever since he won the class-action lawsuit brought about by the vampires. They had deemed it necessary to have special darkened areas in all restaurants so that they could integrate more fully into society.
Poison ivy has come to call, slowly creeping up a wall, her pretty leaves spreading out. Roots taking hold from your growth to sprout.
There's a tale told round these parts. A tale whispered in the darkened corners of bars when us good old boys have had too much to drink and start thinking about things. There ain't many outsiders around who've ever heard it told. But I'm going to tell you, Miss Harper, because I think you and your husband are crazy. Sheriff Jones spat, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. A puddle of tobacco juice bubbled beside his boot as if frying on the sun-baked asphalt. Sheriff, I'm thankful for your concern, Rachel assured the balding man, who appeared slightly annoyed if not nervous. We've heard the stories. That's why we're here. She fanned herself with a battered copy of Newsweek, the gold bracelet on her wrist twinkling in the glaring sunlight. Sheriff Jones shook his head. Yeah, I know. You do this all the time, he said almost sarcastically. But Allen Woods ain't like those other places. Our stories are true. I hope they are, she grinned mischievously, turning to look over her shoulder at her husband emerging from the gas station store.